So thanks for sitting down for an interview. First question, what's your name and what do you currently work on?
My name is Michael Jackson, and I currently work on React Router, and I also do React.js training full-time.
So how long have you been involved with React?
So I've been using React for just over a year, actually. It was like last May, I think, that I first started using React and got involved.
So you spoke today. What was your talk about?
So I spoke about the router. We are getting close to a 1.0 release, so we showed some of the new features that we've been putting in the router for that release, and it's been going pretty well. We've been getting a lot of great feedback, a lot of good community feedback. It's been great to come to the conference, meet a lot of the people who are using our stuff, so that's good. So yeah, we talked about that and kind of where we're going from here. Yeah.
So a common theme with people we've talked to today and yesterday is that in adopting React, it's given them some fundamental new insights into software development and how they approach it. Is there anything that stands out from working with React for a year that gave you new insights in software development?
Absolutely. I would say before I really started using React, I mean, I guess I knew what functions were, and I knew to kind of avoid state. I mean, I've been programming for a while, but it never really, I guess I was never really able to see that clearly how much leverage you can get when you have the proper abstraction. When you have a good functional, the right functional abstraction, a lot of your code just kind of starts to melt away. A lot of your imperative code just kind of starts to melt away. So yeah, it was really kind of an eye-opener for me to just see how powerful functional reactive style programming can be as opposed to object-oriented programming.
You mentioned UI router, and there's been an amazing amount of innovation in the area of routers over the last few years with what Ember did, and then Angular had a router, then there was UI router, and it seems like there's been just a lot of really deep thinking about routers and how you build routers. And so building a router that works with React, which is so disruptive and innovative in its own way, must have sort of raised some more interesting sort of thoughts and innovation in the world of routing. Maybe you can explain how what you've done with routing for React and sort of how it's sort of new and influenced by React.
Oh gosh, yeah. So there are things right now that we're doing with the router that I said in my talk. I didn't even really, I wasn't even thinking that far. I didn't even think about the types of problems that we could possibly solve. I was basically focused, when I first built the router, I was basically focused on just building something that would essentially just sort of match the URL. It would listen for changes, and then it would re-render my component hierarchy whenever the URL changed, whenever we got a new URL. But really digging deeper and seeing the kinds of things that people want to do with React, seeing the kinds of experiences that they want to build has forced us to dig deeper. So now we're actually managing the entire history stack in the browser, including doing things like going back and forward and push and pop and replace. We're doing things like session management, essentially, not managing the session, but routing based on session data. Data, in other words, that doesn't just live in the URL. So the URL isn't our only piece of state. We're taking advantage of HTML5, push state and replace state, which is something that I don't believe that anybody else is actually doing. That first argument to push state and replace state, I think most people are kind of just sort of ignoring it or not really using it. But when you have such a powerful abstraction like React, it sort of frees you up to think about these higher level problems. Well, what could we do if we took advantage of that? Could we persist state across requests, across clicks on the back and forward buttons, and do routing differently based on not just the URL, but also the data that's in the session? So, that, and plus the other area I would say is people who are building native apps with React, and people who are building things like Netflix or building apps for TVs. That to me is really, really interesting because it's a slightly different navigation paradigm than than say the web, where you just have links that can link to any other web page. On mobile devices, it's much more directed. It's much more, okay, I tap on this and now I push a new view onto the stack and then I pop that view. Whereas we traditionally haven't thought about navigation on the web in that way. So, we're still ramping up to get React Native support in the router. We're very, very close. But yeah, that has kind of helped us that has kind of pushed us a little bit, I guess, in response to your question, and has helped us to kind of consider things that we certainly never would have even considered if we weren't, building a router specifically for React.
Thanks. Last question, I guess. What do you see in the future of JavaScript and React in the next couple of years?
That's a really exciting question. Just the stuff that I saw at the conference in January, the stuff that I've seen at this conference. I mean, next January, like the stuff that is going to be coming out of this conference is going to be phenomenal. You're going to have people doing more and more advanced things on native, first of all, on iOS and then on Android. You're going to have people doing more and more advanced things on the web. You already have a couple of outliers, people like Flipboard, who are building 60 frames a second on mobile devices using HTML5 Canvas. And I think you're going to see that kind of thing. I think is going to be a lot more common. Just stuff that like blows your mind is going to be like, oh yeah, of course I'm using React. Like why couldn't I build that? Because it really does give you the kind of like the leverage and the just the tools that you need to be able to even solve those those really hard questions that you ask when you're trying to develop a really, really nice user experience. So yeah, I'm excited to see a bunch of stuff on native, cool stuff on web. It's going to be phenomenal.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.